I mean, I don't know. How do you think we should start this off, David? I mean, this is the first show we've devoted to this topic on Left Reckoning.
hmm I mean, there's no way to start it other than just, putting your heart out there for those families. I mean, um, it's really, really difficult to think about the terror that those children went through and the community and what their parents have been through. But we have to talk about it, and because these things every time it's the last one, right? And it comes back time and time again. And I think it's important to show solidarity with all those affected, and also to be able to talk through some of the villains who create the conditions that allow these things to happen.
Yeah, and it's tough because there's really two discussions that have become acute on this issue. One is
hmm
why this keeps happening. The other is the response to this.
hmm
And as to the first one, we have another shooting in the wake we're in the wake of right now that the details are still coming in
hmm
Tulsa at a Warren Medical facility, I believe. And who knows what happened there, but the killer's apparently down. The tough thing is in the best of times, any sort of information about a tragedy is provisional, but finding out that when you have to rely on police departments that are used to getting away with lies,
hmm
I think that's the other really urgent thing. That is, it's equally as big of a problem right now. Is
hmm
these spectacle mass shootings are a big problem. Everyday violence and intimidation of guns is another problem that shouldn't get swept up under that. But also this failure of institutions
hmm
that we're dealing with. And it's like we're just developing now, I think, a vocabulary to talk about that in a mainstream kind of way. And, mainstream, as people point out, is a relic of the Cold War. That's not really a standard thing for media environment. But I mean, yeah, unless you have anything got to say, we could get to this
No,
NPR article.
yeah. I mean, I just think, yeah, we should go to the police first. We're going to talk about the police. We're going to talk about the politicians, and we're going to talk about gun control as in general as a topic. But I think like really starting to highlight what we're getting out of Uvalde with the police department there, how they acted, to parents, to people in this moment, and we're frankly cowards and allowed something like so monstrous like this to happen. But yeah, let's start with this NPR bit, and we can go from there.
And what's interesting about this is I have a lot of criticisms of NPR and the
Totally, totally.
credulity, frankly, that they give to institutions like police departments, and that's a little bit
hmm
extreme. But I want to do this one, and we'll just listen to this because this is, and then Business Insider also had an article about, and we'll maybe go through that a little bit about how many times the stories are changing about certain things,
hmm
um, and like what's interesting about this is NPR is not like one of these places where they just take as a matter of fact that, like, say JFK was assassinated by like secret deep state folks, right? Like this is like even or any sort of thing, or even like MLK, there was something fishy to look into there. Like this is any sort of like conspiratorial type of brain patterns isn't something that NPR wants to put out there. But we're dealing with something where cops are lying. They're in a conspiracy to cover their ass right now. And how do we deal with that? And like I just feel like this was also one of the lessons from George Floyd summer, was how much cops would just lie about certain things, about aggressiveness of crowds, stuff like that. But anyway, here's how NPR responds to this story about cops. That this was a big point of emphasis. This teacher propped open the door, and that teacher's going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives, and come to find out that that was wrong.
The story of what happened in Uvalde, Texas, leading up to and during a mass shooting that killed 19 children and 2 adults, well, it's a story that keeps on changing. In the last couple days, there have been new developments, and prior law enforcement statements are being walked back. NPR's Laura Benshoff is in Uvalde and brings us the latest. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Elsa.
So I want to talk first about how this gunman got into the school. Like, the original story was that a teacher had left a back door open, right? What do we know now about that?
Right. At a press conference last Friday, the Texas Department of Public Safety had said the gunman entered Robb Elementary through a door, that this teacher had left something in to keep it from locking behind her. Now they're saying that's not true. DPS confirmed to NPR that video footage showed the teacher running back inside and closing the door. She's hired an attorney named Don Flannery to speak on her behalf, and here's how he relays her version of what.
So that's why the announcement was made. It wasn't because, oh, we got that wrong and we want to get the story right. It's because a lawyer got involved. Because this teacher who was cowering could hear the shots being fired, had relatives that were going to school at that school. The teacher, despite grieving from that traumatic experience, had to protect their reputation from the police who looked to her as a way to blame, just to put blame on her. I mean, it's really menacing is what it is. Like this is menacing stuff from the cops.
And I mean, let's talk. We'll come back to some of the details and some of the things that happen to parents in a second. But like, yeah, I think that point is 100% important to make. It's like, think about what the police were trying to do to this person after experiencing one of the most horrific things you could ever imagine. They were trying to throw her not just throw her under the bus, make it seem like she was culpable for their mistakes and for their failures. And what it shows, and this is something that is not unique to Texas, but it is very, very prevalent here, is a complete lack of accountability for the people who we give guns to and are supposedly supposed to be responsible for public safety. So, the Uvalde Police Department now is refusing to cooperate with DPS here in Texas. And at first, DPS was coming out in support of the police and ran a lot of interference in their favor. And before we even get to like the most recent developments here, it has to be noted for people that if you saw some of the kind of national interviews with DPS agents that were on, big networks like CNN, MSNBC, etc., and you thought, wow, these guys are, bumbling buffoons. Well, one, you're not wrong. And two, it's because these people are not used to ever being held accountable. Because of Greg Abbott, because of the Republicans here, they have funneled billions of dollars into the hands of the DPS here to run a parallel border operation to the Border Patrol, which has been an absolute disaster. We've talked about that on this program many times. It has been an absolute disaster that's cost human lives and has been, this is the least of the problems, but a huge waste of taxpayer money, right? These are just people who are not ever questioned, never feel like they're going to have any pushback from the political system or from the public. And you can see that in their kind of public facing statements.
Sorry. Yeah, there's this another on MSNBC here. Again, like these mainstream sources are having to confront, like stare into the abyss with this police department here. No Lie with Brian Cohen on Twitter. A CNN reporter just confronted the Uvalde School District Police Chief to ask why they are refusing to cooperate with the investigation into their response. And I don't believe there's video of this, right? But
we do have video of that.
Of this specific thing. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that is what this video is. But yeah, the police chief said they will only explain themselves to the parents once the families quit grieving. Yeah, that's what this video is here then.
Which is, I believe so.
Okay, yeah, here is...
I mean, I know that the school district has thrown media off of their property saying that they will be arrested for trespassing. And I believe this is the police chief here, but I could be incorrect.
So I want to talk to you about your decision and what the DPS director said.
How's it going?
Good, I'm Pete. Nice to
Matt
meet you.
Freeman, nice to meet
I
you.
want to talk to you about the decision and what...
Department we're doing, but just to let y'all know, and I just spoke with...
I know you did, but...
you're not blocking me, are you?
No.
Turn this way.
No, just so y'all know. Just so you all know, obviously, we're not going to release anything. We have people in our community being buried, so we're going to be respectful.
I just want your reaction
we're gonna be
the director McGraw saying that you were responsible for the decision to go into that room. How do you explain yourself to the
We're going to be
parents?
respectful to the family.
I understand that, but you have an opportunity
to
explain yourself to the parents.
And just so you know, we're going to do that eventually, obviously.
When?
And whenever this is done, and let the families quit grieving, then we'll do that, obviously. And just so everybody knows, we've been in contact with DPS every day. Just so you all know.
They say
To tell them that they don't want to be
I've been
investigated.
on the phone with them every day.
They say you're not cooperating. So just 2 seconds.
Just so you know, we've been talking to them every day.
What is your
just lying over dead kids.
And I don't want to. I mean, we're going to talk about politics in a minute, but I want to keep on the police for a second. It's been interesting to see because I mean, you can see the fear in his eyes. He doesn't want to be held accountable, and they're trying to delay this because they're hoping that something big will happen somewhere else and attention will be drawn away from them. There's been a lot of really great reporting that specifically talking to people in the community, and that's a town where there is a good segment of the population that's very supportive of law enforcement generally. But from what I've been reading, while some of those people are sort of some people are maintaining that support, but I think even amongst people who are fervent supporters, there's a lot of questions that are being asked, especially since this is a smaller town. People are very likely to be directly affected by this, and the stories that we get is just like beyond cowardice. It just goes into straight up malice, and a kind of self-centeredness, personal self-preservation over the community that you've sworn to protect. And you can see that they're trying to do a lot of kind of cleanup right now, and that's what this all is about. Not just on the national scale is what I'm trying to say. Like there's a community aspect to this too, where they want the big reporters to leave so that they can sort of deal with people that they know, and might be able to either intimidate or silence, versus having the national spotlight on them right now. Right. If they can delay 3-4 weeks and, the trucks leave and the national media leaves, they're going to have a much better time explaining this shit to the public versus having, pesky reporters in there questioning their facts.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. This is really a running out the clock situation, because like and it's almost a shock that this hasn't happened before with one of these high profile killings.
Yeah.
Like that immediate exposure, like, I mean, I guess they haven't really fucked up this bad. I mean, I'll just play a little bit from this Business Insider piece it's just 5 days ago. So this is probably old, but it's like a certain number of times the cops have changed their story. Texas police changed details of Uvalde 13 times. But here's just one part of it. Police arrived at the scene quickly but backed off for more than an hour. At the press conference a day after the shooting, McCraw said, bottom line, law enforcement was there. They did engage immediately. They did contain him in a classroom. They put a tactical stack together in a very orderly way and breached the assault and assaulted the individual. Lieutenant Chris Olivares on May 25th in an interview with NBC's Today Show emphasized the speed of the police reaction. He said that police responded within a moment's notice. He also said that officers, without hesitation, I don't know, like, this is just like, are we being fucking poetic right now? What do words mean when you say something like, without hesitation, tried to make entry into that school, but were stopped by the gunman firing at them? Well, what else would cause hesitation but the gunman firing at you? But by May 26th, police said that the gunman had not been killed by had not been killed by a U.S. Border Patrol agent until 12:40, raising questions of what happened in the roughly hour between the shooting beginning and the gunman being shot to death. According to new information from McCraw on May 27th, 3 local police officers got to the school at 11:40, just 2 minutes after the gunman initially entered the building and opened fire. 2 of the cops were grazed by bullets as they entered the school, he added. I mean, who knows if that's true, right? In the latest description, McCraw said police exchanged gunfires with the subject until 11:45, but by 11:51, a police sergeant and federal agent arrived. And there's, again, like, they're making shit up.
Yeah, and like if you have the video of them dealing with the parents, that'd be helpful. But just to go through it real quick for folks. I'm sure. I mean, this event has really shook so many people. I feel like it feels very different. But what happened here is the shooter killed their grandmother. They drove off to school armed with 2 AR-15s, crashed their car. They exchanged gunfire with the police officer, allegedly, went into the school. So and a teacher saw this person crash their vehicle and run into the school with weapons, right, and called the police. And then basically they let this person in, let them barricade themselves in a room with students and teachers. Contained. And then when parents started to get calls and showed up, this is what happened.
And so this is just to warn folks. Like, I haven't watched much of this video myself. Like, this is maybe the worst thing I've ever seen. But this is parents being contained themselves as their kids are contained with a guy with 2 AR-15s that's killing them.
Yeah.
Why are you out here worried about us?
It's so horrific. And and from what we know now, off duty border patrol agent came in and supposedly shot the shooter. But we're waiting for more information because they are basically trying to prevent the facts from getting out to the public. And as we've said here, they've lied constantly. They've been caught in a bunch of lies. So I'm not even, fully confident in reporting, the full facts of the case right now because, we just don't have all this information because they're playing this game.
And there's a lot of insinuation being made, particularly by like right-wing leaning propagandists like Posobiec and Tim Pool, that there might be something nefarious. Like what they're covering up isn't like some secret woke agenda or like CRT shadow group. It's that they might have shot kids in addition to like not actually stopping the gunman for that long a time. I think that's probably the main candidate because there was a statement that we believe at this time that the children were all killed by the gunman, and it's like, well, that raises a red flag to me. Like, well, let's see if this is one of those things that later gets revised when the national media has left town.
And those people were just such pigs. I'm just going to say that right now. People coming out here and acting like there's some kind. I mean, this is like Alex Jones level stuff. And it just it's just beyond unacceptable. And I know I don't have to say that, but it just infuriates me so much. And I mean, before because we could talk about the cops for a while. I don't know if we have any more clips or anything we want to hit on, but I do want to just note a couple things before we move over to the Texas GOP, because Lord in heaven, we got a lot to say about those folks. That this is a town, like many towns in America. And we talk about, policing in this country a lot in this program. We've also talked to it. We did an episode with our friends at This Is Revolution on this. And, when we're talking about policing, in this country, a lot of conversations have been about the police budget. And, it's worth noting that this is a town where a significant amount of their money is going to this police force. And something like 40%. I could be around there in the ballpark, but this is what happens. This is what happens when you disinvest from society, right? And the only thing that they have is a police budget to sort of funnel money into. And I don't think this needs to be said too much, but they don't show up for you. They don't protect you. They are there to enforce the will of capitalists, to protect property and protect the wealthy. They don't care if there's a shooting in a poor neighborhood. And they sure as hell, it seems, don't care if there's an active shooter shooting up children right in front of them. I mean, it's a horrific investment. And you just cannot separate these things from talking about the way that we run cities and communities in this country.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I do think there is the sort of like good meaning concern about, say, a slogan like defund the police. Well, it's like, what happens in a situation like this? And it's like, you need to delineate between what we do with policing and the concepts of security. And like me personally, the way I understand like something like police abolition would probably still entail for the foreseeable future something like state armed first response and security for things, just because of how much the practicalities of guns in this country and that sort of thing. So, I think that's an important thing to say. When we talk about like this is what cops do. They're not actually. There's a great demonstration. Honestly, they aren't heroes. They're not going to 24 save the day. They're going to cover their ass, and they're going to harass people for petty shit that we don't need to have them harassed for. And that's the thing, is I say all that things about the armed first response, knowing that we have a lot of stuff to reform about, like SWAT and stuff like that as well. But it's like, police itself, like this is a really good demonstration of how untrustworthy they are as presently constituted.
And again, as we find out more information, I think it's going to be even more damning. The fact that they're no longer cooperating, certainly with media, but even with state agencies that are supposed to oversee them. Remember, if you're just joining us, that the police department is now no longer cooperating with the Texas Department of Public Safety. And while the Texas Department of Public Safety early on was coming out in support of these guys, it should be noted that, just a couple days ago, Director Colonel Steve McCraw said it was the wrong decision to wait.
That's why they said we're not going to cooperate with you anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
was totally.
Yeah.
But what that means to me is that as more information is coming even to the DPS, who was willing up front to play along with the police as they were attacking this teacher, even the DPS is starting to back off. And again, as I said it a little while ago, the DPS is not some kind of angelic organization themselves. So it just shows that this shit is so rotten, and it's rotten all the way, to the core here. And, like, what have we got from the Texas GOP is this really, really nasty kind of language. They have been using this phrase, which I don't want to fixate on it too much, but it upsets me very much, where they're saying we need to secure targets. We need to secure our targets. And what they mean by that is schools, right? Just absolutely kind of despicable military phrasing for a place where we're supposed to be educating children and the next generation of this society. But that's the kind of language that's floating around right now from our elected officials.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's like, it's just how cynical they move to like different things that would sell at like security conferences, security contractors. Like, oh, this is going to be a boon for fucking security guards.
Well, talking about, the doors being unlocked and we should only have one entrance into schools, which is absolutely, that's not the problem. I'm sorry, friends. That's not the fucking problem. Should we go over and talk about the politics though a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to sort of start it off, there was this John Cornyn tweet that quoted Rep. Tony Gonzalez, who's been, a fixture during all this. But Cornyn says, the second guessing and finger pointing among state and local law enforcement is destructive, distracting, and unfair. Complex scenarios require split-second decisions, easy to criticize with 2020 hindsight. I mean, just to use the language there again. Like, sorry, as an English major, like, I love that. Like, split-second decisions, as Cody Johnson, I believe, replies, 2,400 split seconds. And then somebody else says 4,800, it was 80 minutes. Yeah. Like, it's just like, you don't need to tell. It's just a weird weird license that cops and cop defenders have with language that drives me insane.
Yeah, well, it's always depersonalized. And the fact is, it doesn't matter how much money you pump into these departments and how much training you give them when their everyday training and their everyday experience is to treat the public with suspicion and contempt. And that's what you saw with the parents, and to protect themselves above all else. I mean, that's all the excuses for why they were able to kill unarmed Black people, is that they were scared, right? And I think at a certain point you need to believe them, that this is a scared group of people running around with weapons in your communities, and it does not make us safer.
Yeah, and just to go over to that passive language point, like was contained when the kid barricaded himself in a classroom with kids. Like, think about was contained. Just that implies that the cops did that, right? Like, if he contained him, and just lying about a dozen and a half dead kids. It's unbelievable.
So let's talk a little bit about Abbott and Co. There's a hell of a lot to start with, but let's just start with this, because this is what they're going to try to do, right? This is Greg Abbott here saying that he's requesting Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Speaker Dade Phelan to each convene a special legislative committee, not session, committee, following last week's tragedy in Uvalde. As Texans mourn, we must reassess the twin issues of school safety and mass violence. And here are the things that he wants to be in that committee: school safety, mental health, social media, police training, and firearm safety. Again, this is one of those things. This is a committee that will be set up to sweep this under the rug. There needs to be a special session put in place to actually pass legislation on this, not just to get everyone in a room together to take some pictures and to make it seem like you're acting fast on this. Let's also not paint too rosy of picture either, but we have to point out the fact that what they want to do right now is symbolic bullshit, right? And two, the fact is that even if we do get an actual special session to do something about this, nothing will be done. Remember that after El Paso, right, the horrific shooting where a hate-filled bigot drove across the state from Dallas to El Paso, one of the most beautiful and wonderful cities in this country, to just shoot up people. The response from the Texas GOP was to make it easier for people to get a handgun without a permit, constitutional carry, which, by the way, this is why remembering your history is really damn important, because these guys love to paint a false history of Texas and our history. Some of the first legislation that was passed when Texas became an independent country was to restrict guns in public and restrict knives in public, right? So when they say, oh, we're returning to our roots, right? That's bullshit. They are charting a new, extremely dangerous path for all of us right now. That's the kind of response that we get from the GOP.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what Eric Hobsbawm inventing tradition right before our eyes about killing devices, basically. Mm-hmm. Because the OK Corral, like that whole, if people know their history with that, I keep forgetting the fucking gunslinger that they hired, but it was all at that point. It's all like, come to the hotel and turn in your firearms, otherwise you got to leave town. Because we have too much gunfighting going on, and it's frankly like scaring away businessmen from the town that we want to boost and expand. So yeah.
Well, let's play this Beto clip and talk about this. And I mean, people know how I feel about Beto. I'm not particularly enthralled. We're going to give him a little bit of props here, I think. But it should be noted that Beto got off of a plane where he's going to New York City for a fundraiser when this happened, which I don't know. It just sort of shows some of where his head's at. But I will say, people have seen this clip, and we're going to play it right now. But everything that I've read from reputable reporters here in Texas who have insights into the campaign say that this was at least unknown. Like, if it was planned, it was planned by Beto himself. The staff had no idea that it was going to go on. He was invited to this press conference by members of the community who had lost their children because they wanted him to be with them there. So that's just some important context here too, that he was invited to be there with other folks, and then this happened.
I mean, that's interesting context. I did not hear that.
Excuse me. Sit down. You're out of line and embarrassment. Hey, sit down and don't play this.
The next shooting is right now, and you are doing nothing.
No, you need to get his out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick that would come to a deal like this to make a political issue. It's on like you. Why don't you get out of here?
All right.
I respect it. I got, because that the entire thing's a charade. Those motherfuckers getting on that fucking stage, being all, oh goodness, we gotta come together right now, and it's important. Like, no, fuck you. Like, good for Beto for that. Like, I like what remains to be seen about follow through or whatever. And like you said about our complaints about his political limitations, but I respect that.
No, I mean, here's the thing. Like, oh, this is a political stunt. 100% is a stunt.
Yep.
It's a stunt in a state where political stunts are the norm now. That is the game that they play. The fucking governor of this state set up a blockade on the southern border that cost the state billions of dollars in revenue, left food rotting in trucks because he wanted to go on Tucker Carlson's show and be the tough on the border governor, right? Come on, man. At this point, like, y'all have invited plenty of political stunts, and I will say, I think that I will give my tip of my cap to Beto on that, because I think a lot of times he's not my favorite guy. But I think that's right to show up at something like that and to speak for people who are being left off of that stage, for example.
Yep.
Let's talk about these people for a second. Let's talk about the Texas GOP, right? Because you hear that fella yelling, "How dare you make this a political issue? How dare you make this a political issue?" It's already a political issue. First of all, who's up on that stage, right? Second of all, what was the plan for that weekend for those boys? They were going to go up. They were going to go fly down to Houston and go and speak at the National Rifle Association conference. And who was speaking at the National Rifle Association conference? Greg Abbott, Ted Cruz, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, Republican, Angela Paxton, Republican, Ken Paxton, Republican, right? Who's going to speak? That's a political issue. That's a political stage. And it's bullshit to act like they aren't political figures when it comes to guns, right? They're never political when it comes to guns. Everybody else is. Right.
Well, it's just so funny post Citizens United, and I mean lobbying was a thing before then too, that this commodity, this has a lobbying arm like that lobbies and pays for politicians to go do politics. The idea that it isn't political is, I mean, coming from the representatives that deal directly with that lobbying arm. I mean, this should be an alien would be able to see right through this.
No, totally. And, let's, be fair to everybody. After praying, this is from the Texas Observer, after praying, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick decided that he was not going to go to the NRA meeting. Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton, they did not go in person, but they taped messages for the convention. And, of course, Trump was there. But there was another figure, and I don't know if you have this video handy.
Ted?
Yeah. Everyone's favorite, constantly melting boy, Ted Cruz, showed up and was quite happy to go. And we'll watch this clip for a second. And I just want people to watch this because at first Ted Cruz is going to say what Ted Cruz is typically going to say, right? Bullshit, evading, right? But just notice how much of a fucking politician this asshole is, that he can't even feign sympathy. And he starts going on this kind of stupid rah-rah rally around the flag bullshit. Just watch this for a second.
There are 19 sets of parents who are never going to get to kiss their child goodnight again.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
It's easy to go to politics.
But it's important. It's at the heart of the issue.
I get that that's where the media likes to go.
No, it's not. It's where many of the people we've talked to here like to go.
The proposals from Democrats in the media, inevitably, when some violent psychopath murders people.
A violent psychopath who's able to get a weapon so easily. 18-year-old with 2 AR-15s.
If you want to stop violent crime, the proposals the Democrats have, none of them would have stopped this.
But why does this only happen in your country? I really think that's what many people around the world they cannot fathom. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism so awful?
I'm sorry you think American exceptionalism is awful.
I think this aspect.
Just what an...
You got your political agenda.
No, it's honestly,
God love you.
I mean,
Senator, it's not. I just want to understand why.
I just think that really exposes just how slimy of a guy Ted Cruz is there, because he knows the second he says that he can hold that up, right? But look at this foreigner attacking America, and I'm going to stand up for the United States.
Exactly. He's got his Uncle Sam escape hatch, sort of like parachute pull, and it pulls him right out of there because all of his partisans are going to be like, yeah, that person said American exceptionalism in a bad way. Mm-hmm. Fuck that. Fuck them. Let's go buy another gun.
And, we'll talk about, people who are watching me talk know how I feel about guns and gun control in general. I'm not a big fan on big bans or anything like that. We'll talk about that in a moment. The fact that Ted Cruz can't even entertain or speak about anything right there, I think is really telling and showing for the kind of soul that this person has, along with the fact that he's just constantly looking for his little hook. He's a fisherman, right? He's like looking for that little hook that he can stick in there. And the second he got that ammunition, he was ready to go. But I mean, before we talk about what we think, I'd like to, paint a picture for folks as to what's on the table here in Texas. I want to talk about what Beto's positions on, and I want to talk about what the Texas Democratic Party has been saying. After the shooting, Beto came out and he says it's insane that we allow an 18-year-old to go in and buy an AR-15. What the hell did we think he was going to do with that? Then he said, right there, talking about Uvalde, if you want a solution, stop selling AR-15s in the state of Texas. Now, his campaign said, and this is from the Texas Tribune, his campaign says Beto believes that we should act immediately to prevent the next mass shooting by prioritizing common sense gun safety reforms that have a broad bipartisan support across the state. That includes popular policies such as repealing permitless carry, passing universal background checks, implementing red flag laws, enacting safe storage laws, and keeping weapons of war on the battlefield by preventing their sales in our community. And it's notable that people probably remember the famous Beto O'Rourke quote from when he was in his quixotic ride for president in 2020, that he says, "Hell yeah, we'll take your guns. We're going to take your AR-15s." That's where Abbott really wanted to hit him in this election. And I'd been saying that I think, of course, that ad's going to be playing 24/7 as the election season really starts to heat up. I don't think that's going to hit in the same way at this point. I mean, I think with a certain group of people who are sort of unmovable, I think that might attract them. But I think for people who might not 2-3 weeks ago, have sort of treated that as reasonable, might start in the near future. It's notable too that, like, as he has been running, because he said he wanted to do a buyback, a gun buyback. He has not run on that. He has not highlighted that. But when he has been asked on it, he has said that, he says that his opinions on these things have not changed. So again, we'll see how he starts to develop his positions in the near future, but that's sort of where he is at. And, I think it's notable that, like, one, he's saying some of these things, two, he has been a little bit back and forth on the issue of buybacks, which I think is important regardless of which way you feel about that one way or the other. But let's talk about the state Democratic Party for a second, just because we opened up the segment on the Texas GOP by talking about Greg Abbott basically putting forward a bullshit session where they'll talk about, people are watching too much violence on social media. The Democratic Party here has said this is what they want to pursue, is raise the minimum age to purchase a firearm to 21 years old, require universal background checks for all firearms, implement red flag laws to allow temporary removal of firearms from those who are in imminent danger to themselves or others, require a cooling off period of the purchase of a firearm, and regulate civilian ownership of high capacity magazines.